Welcome back students to your physics class. In the first chapter, we learned about motion of objects in a straight line. And in the next chapter, we learned about the causes of motion. We also saw that an unbalanced force is required to start motion of a stationary object. Again, an unbalanced force is required to change the speed of a moving object. And this force is also required to change the direction of a moving object. Now let us just take some examples or situations. When an object is dropped from a certain height, what happens? It automatically falls towards the ground or towards the earth. Planets move around the sun in circular orbits. Each and every instant of their motion, the direction keeps on changing. The moon also revolves around the sun in an orbit. So when we were talking about the objects where a stationary body moves, where the speed of a moving object changes, where the direction of a moving object changes, all this happens because some unbalanced force is acting on those objects. Is it also applicable for these three cases? What do you answer? Okay. Let us take some more situations before we finally answer what force causes the movement of these objects. Let us take a simple example when we just take a ball and we just throw it upwards. What happens? We know that the ball will reach a certain height. So as you just lift the ball, as you just throw the ball, you will see that as it goes up above, the velocity of the ball keeps on reducing or keeps on decreasing, and after it reaches a certain height from the ground, the velocity becomes zero, and once the velocity becomes zero, then the ball stops at a certain height and then it falls downwards, right? This is a common observation. So once the ball is thrown, the velocity keeps on decreasing, so there is an acceleration for that ball, and once it reaches a certain height, the velocity becomes zero, and now the ball starts moving downwards, right? Let us take another example, the same example which we had seen in the first chapter, where a person is holding a stone which is tied to a string, and he is holding the string and he is just moving it. So when he is moving the stone, we know that it moves in a circular path, where at every movement the direction keeps on changing. So we know that since the stone is following a circular orbit, there is some force which is keeping it moving in this circular path, and this force actually comes from the center. So since this force comes from the center, we call this force as centripetal force or center-seeking force. The force which causes the movement of an object in a circular path is termed as centripetal force. So here again this causes the movement of an object, so it is definitely an example for an unbalanced force. The unbalanced force here is termed as centripetal force. So can you relate it to the examples here? So the movement of planets around the sun and the movement of satellites around the planets is all because of this force, which is centripetal force. Now we know a common story, we have been hearing it from a long time, that Sir Isaac Newton, he was sitting under an apple tree when an apple fell, and then he thought that there was some force which was acting from the earth, which was pulling the apple towards its surface. So there is some force which is able to pull things downwards. what did Newton infer by all these examples? It is not only certain objects which are able to attract few objects towards them, but according to Sir Newton, every object attracts every other object in this universe. So according to Newton, every object attracts every other object in this universe. So if I am standing on the surface of the earth attracts me and I also attract the earth. If I am holding this chalk in my hand is able to attract the chalk and the chalk is also able to attract my hand. So this is applicable for all the objects in this universe. We will learn few more examples and then we will see that we are able to associate it with this force and with this law. So this force of attraction between these any two objects in the universe is called as the gravitational force. So how do we define gravitation or gravitational force? It is a phenomenon of attraction of any two objects, and these objects can be terrestrial, means they can be found on the surface of earth, or they can be celestial, outside in the space, moons, stars, planets, and these objects can be of any size, shape or mass, and irrespective of the distance between these objects as well as the medium between these objects. So gravitation is the phenomenon of attraction of any two objects, whether they are terrestrial or celestial, of any size, shape, mass, irrespective of the distance and medium between them. I hope the introduction of gravitation and the examples are clear to you. In the next class, we will learn about the universal law of gravitation. Until the next class, goodbye to you.